If you're anything like me, you like to buy cars, more specifically old cars, even more specifically old Japanese cars. This is my 1986 Nissan 300zx. And while it does run and drive, it doesn't run and drive well. It needs a lot of maintenance to make it roadworthy again. This series is going to be less of a tutorial series and more of a follow along as I replace various parts throughout the car, but hopefully you can learn a thing or two as you follow along. Today we're going to be doing a pretty simple installation, just a fuel filter. Recently mine decided to give out on me, given I should have probably replaced it sooner, but today we're doing a fuel filter and the fuel hoses that go with it. First thing we're going to do is start the car, let it idle for a little bit, and then disconnect the fuel pump wire. That way it depressurizes, and whenever we disconnect the hoses, there won't be any pressure splashing fuel in our faces. Alright, I've let the car idle for just a little bit, and now we're going to disconnect the fuel pump. Now that that's been disconnected, we are going to try and crank the car a few more times to get any pressure out, and then we'll replace the fuel filter. That should be good for right now. Here's what you're going to need to replace the fuel filter. The fuel filter, 8mm hoses, and a Phillips head screwdriver. Once you get the pressure out of the system, it's just as simple as removing 5 Phillips head screws, 4 in the hoses and 1 on the clamp that holds the fuel filter. Whenever you're removing this, make sure that you put some rags down underneath because some fuel will probably leak out. Once I get it removed, I'm going to show you a perfect example of why you want to replace the hoses every time you replace the fuel filter. So there's still some fuel left, but I had to cut it down the middle because it was melted onto where it goes and it just refused to come off. But now I can remove these clamps and apply them to the new hose. Had a little bit of a fuel spill down in here when I removed the hose, so I'm going to let it air dry for a little bit while I cut the new hoses to the correct length to reinstall the fuel filter. Whenever you're putting on a new fuel filter, you always want to look for the out portion of it because that's the way it's going to face. The out portion is going to face up. So now I have the new fuel filter on with all the hoses on it, correct lengths and everything, clamps back on it, so now it's just a simple matter of reinstalling it how we took it out. Okay, so I've actually run into my first pretty big issue. I think the fuel filter, the replacement one I bought, is just a little longer than the stock one. So I cut the bottom hose to the same length of the one that I took out, and whenever I push it all the way down, it kinks a little bit. So I was just going to tighten the clamp to where it is now, just let it sit a little higher, but I can't get a screwdriver quite in there that fits. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is that there's 2 10mm bolts that hold the bracket in for the fuel filter. So I'm going to take that out, line it up to where I need it, tighten the screw from there, and then install it back in. So as far as I can tell, everything is back in. There's no kinks in any of the fuel lines. So now the only steps left are to plug the fuel pump back in and start her up. Alright, so everything's back in the car. Don't seem to notice any issues like fuel leaking, kinks in the hoses, or lingering fuel smell. Everything started back up as soon as I plugged the fuel pump wire back in. Overall, not too expensive, pretty easy installation, and I recommend doing it if you don't know the last time that your fuel filter was replaced. So, this has been episode 1 of the Z Chronicles. Thank you for watching if you watched all the way through to the end, and make sure to subscribe to watch me slowly but surely make this car roadworthy again. Catch you next time.